The planet Xylar had always been quiet. Its green forests stretched across wide valleys, and tall crystal mountains reflected the sunlight in dazzling colors. The Zari people had lived here for hundreds of generations, tending their cities and villages with care. They were peaceful, skilled in technology and nature, and had never known the presence of another intelligent species. Life followed its gentle rhythm, and the sky was mostly empty, filled only with clouds and birds. One morning, as the twin suns rose over the eastern mountains, Nero was walking along the edge of the forest. He was a young engineer, curious and clever, always tinkering with machines that hummed softly and glowed faintly. Nero liked to watch the clouds, imagining shapes and patterns, when something unusual caught his eye. Far above the horizon, strange silhouettes moved. They were massive, much larger than any Zari craft or natural formation. Their shapes were dark and sharp against the bright sky, and they hovered silently. Nero's heart beat faster. He had seen other ships in his life, but these were different. They seemed alive in a strange way, as if they were looking down at the world. He ran back to the village, calling out to others. Villagers came out, their eyes wide as they looked toward the sky. The council of elders gathered quickly, bringing their instruments and screens to scan the objects. Data flowed in slowly, but it was clear that these were not ordinary ships. Their size, energy readings, and movement patterns were unlike anything the Zari had seen. The council debated urgently. Some feared that these could be explorers, curious travelers from a distant star. Others whispered that they were invaders, coming to claim Xylar by force. Fear spread among the people. Families gathered in their homes, and children clung to parents as the sky darkened slightly under the shadows of the hovering vessels. Nero stayed near the observation tower, scanning the ships with his instruments. He noticed small changes in their positions, careful movements that suggested intelligence and precision. These are not accidents, he said to himself. They know what they are doing. The Zari Council made a decision. A small team would be sent to study the ships from a safe distance. Nero volunteered immediately. He wanted to understand these newcomers, not only to protect his people but also to see the unknown. Alongside him were other skilled Zari scouts, each chosen for their intelligence and bravery. They traveled in swift gliders, moving silently through the forests. From above, the ships looked even more intimidating. Their hulls were polished and strong, glinting in the sun, with strange shapes jutting out like spikes. Nero could feel the weight of history in this moment. The Zari had never faced anything like this before, and he understood that what they did next could change the future of their people forever. As they approached closer, they noticed small lights on the ship's surfaces. These lights blinked in patterns, almost like a language, but it was impossible for the Zari to understand. Nero tried to analyze the signals, comparing them to every system he knew. Nothing matched. He felt a mix of fear and excitement. These beings were advanced, far beyond what the Zari had imagined, but they were real and present. Suddenly, one of the ships shifted direction. It moved faster than the Zari expected, descending slightly toward the valley below. The scouts held their positions, careful not to make sudden movements. Nero's mind raced. He realized that these ships were not here by accident. They were studying Xylar and the Zari, and perhaps judging them. When they returned to the village, Nero reported his observations. The elders listened in silence. The people of Xylar gathered, looking at the sky as the ships hovered, casting long shadows over their homes. For the first time, they understood how small they were in the galaxy. Their peaceful world had been touched by something immense and unknown. That night, as the twin suns set and stars appeared, Nero walked through the forest alone. He felt the weight of what was coming. The Zari had lived for centuries without enemies, without war, and now the sky carried a silent threat. He looked up at the strange silhouettes and whispered, "Who are you? Why have you come here?" The air was still, and the ships did not answer. Yet Nero knew that their presence marked the beginning of a new era. The Zari's world would never be the same again, and the choices they made now would decide the fate of their people. Nero returned home, determined to prepare. He did not yet know if these beings were friends or foes, but he knew one thing clearly. The first time the Zari saw the Terran warships, their world changed forever. Peace had ended, and a new story was beginning. The morning after the first sighting, the Zari Council gathered again in their high crystal hall. Nero presented the data collected by the scout team. The images and energy readings were clear. These ships were unlike anything Xylar had ever known. Their hulls are incredibly strong, Nero explained, pointing to the holographic display. They are armed. Look at these projections. They could destroy entire villages with a single strike. The elders looked worried. Many had never seen weapons so powerful. Are they coming to trade? Asked Elder Vero, trying to stay calm. Or are they here to conquer? Nero shook his head. I do not think they are here for trade. Their movements are precise, careful, and deliberate. They are scanning us. They are studying our world. The council debated late into the day. Plans were made to strengthen the borders, and small defense units were deployed around key villages. The Zari had never fought a real battle, but they were clever and resourceful. They had strong technology in energy fields and defensive systems, but nothing could match the size and power of the Terran ships. Meanwhile, Nero and a small team decided to move closer to one of the larger Terran vessels. They traveled silently through the forest in their gliders, keeping low to avoid detection. From a distance, the ship was enormous. It hovered just above the mountains, reflecting the sunlight in a metallic glare that made Nero shield his eyes. As they observed, a transmission reached the Zari through the air. It was a series of strange sounds and pulses, unlike any language they had known. Nero quickly tried to decode it with his instruments. He worked for hours, running comparisons and analyzing patterns. This is a warning, Nero finally said. I cannot translate the words fully, but the meaning is clear. They do not want us to approach. They are prepared to use force if necessary. The Zari villagers grew anxious. The children were kept indoors, and families gathered their belongings in case of attack. For the first time, fear became a daily presence on Xylar. Yet Nero felt something different. He felt a spark of determination. He knew that understanding these beings was the key to survival. Over the next few days, the scouts observed small changes in the Terran ships. They noticed drones launching from the hulls, scanning the forests and rivers below. The drones moved with precision and returned quickly to the ship. Nero realized that the Terrans were intelligent, careful, and patient. They would not strike without reason, but their weapons were ready. Nero and the council began to plan. They decided that knowledge and strategy would be more powerful than raw force. The Zari would learn from the Terrans, adapt quickly, and prepare for the possibility of a battle they might not survive. Every village was equipped with early warning sensors, and the gliders were modified to carry defensive devices. One evening, Nero returned to the observation tower. He looked at the sky as the Terran ships hovered above the mountains. Their enormous silhouettes blocked the light of the twin suns in some places, casting long shadows over the forests. Nero felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. These ships are a test, he thought. They are seeing what we can do, how we react. They might be judging if we are worth engaging or destroying. Suddenly, one of the drones moved closer to the tower. Nero activated the sensors and watched its movements carefully. The small device hovered, scanning the area, and then quickly returned to the ship. It was as if the Terrans were learning about the Zari as fast as the Zari were learning about them. The council realized that this first encounter was not just an observation. It was a lesson in survival. They began holding training sessions for villagers, teaching them how to hide, how to use defensive technology, and how to move quickly through the forests. Even the children learned the basics of strategy and observation. Nero worked day and night, analyzing every signal, every pattern. He discovered that the Terrans relied on careful formations and communication between ships. If the Zari could disrupt those communications, they could slow down the Terrans and protect their villages. By the end of the week, the mood among the Zari was tense but determined. The people had seen the power of the Terran ships and understood the danger, but they also realized they were not powerless. Intelligence, adaptability, and courage could make a difference. That night, as Nero rested in his small workshop, he looked out at the sky again. The ships remained, silent and imposing, yet they had given the Zari a glimpse of their strengths and weaknesses. Nero knew that the coming days would test every skill, every plan, and every heart. For the first time, the Zari understood that the Terran warships were not just visitors. They were a force beyond anything the planet had ever faced, and the future of Xylar rested on how wisely the Zari could respond. The first sighting had become a warning, and the last stand was quietly approaching. The morning air on Xylar was cool and calm, but tension hung over the forests and villages. The Terran warships had stayed in orbit for several days, and the Zari had grown restless and alert. Nero, along with a team of scouts, prepared for the first real test. The council had given orders to observe and defend, but nobody knew exactly what the Terrans were capable of. From the observation tower, Nero could see small energy pulses moving across the forests. The Terrans had sent drones to map the terrain and locate key settlements. Each pulse hit with precision, leaving a small area of scorched ground. Nero realized that these were not just tests, they were warnings. The Terrans were showing what they could do if provoked. "We need to act carefully," Nero said to his team. "They are strong, but they are predictable. We can use the forests and rivers to our advantage." The team moved quickly through the trees, using gliders and small hover vehicles. Nero had modified some of the equipment to carry defensive devices, small energy nets, and temporary shields. Every movement was calculated, every step measured. They could not afford mistakes. The first encounter came sooner than expected. A group of Terran drones descended toward a small village near the edge of the forest. Nero's team watched from a hidden ridge. The drones scanned the area, and their sensors lit up every object in the village. "Now," Nero whispered, and the team activated their devices. Energy nets shot into the air, creating barriers that confused the drone's sensors. Lights flickered on the drones as they tried to adjust, and one crashed into a tree with a sharp metallic sound. The Zari cheered quietly, but Nero knew this was only a minor victory. "Do not celebrate yet," he said. "They will learn quickly." The Terrans responded with small precision blasts, carefully avoiding large areas but demonstrating their power. Trees and rocks were torn apart, and small fires burned in the distance. Nero's team moved faster, using the shadows and uneven terrain to hide. They launched small attacks on the drones, disabling a few more, but always retreating before the Terrans could target them directly. The villagers watched from hiding places, awe and fear mixed on their faces. For the first time, they saw the might of an alien force, yet they also saw that their own people were clever and brave. Children whispered to one another about the scouts' bravery, and elders began to hope that maybe, just maybe, the Zari could defend themselves. By midday, Nero noticed a pattern in the Terran drones' movements. They were careful, relying on the same paths and formations. The Zari could anticipate where they would go next. Nero quickly shared this information with other scout teams across the region. Small, coordinated strikes were launched, catching the drones off guard. One scout team managed to disable a drone near a river, sending it crashing into the water. Another created a temporary energy barrier that forced the drones to change direction, slowing them down. It was not a large battle, but it was the first time the Zari had stood against the Terrans and seen results. As the day ended, the Terrans withdrew their drones, returning to the massive warships above. The forest was quiet again, except for the sounds of small fires and damaged terrain. Nero's team returned to the village, tired but proud. The council met them and listened to the reports. "You have done well," Elder Vero said, nodding. "This shows that intelligence and strategy can compete with strength. Today we learned that courage and cleverness are weapons as strong as any energy beam." Nero felt a small sense of relief, but he knew the real challenge had only begun. The Terrans had observed everything. They would adapt and improve. The Zari had gained knowledge and confidence, but the danger was far from over. That night, Nero walked through the village, looking at the stars above. The warships were still visible, small points of light against the dark sky. He thought about the Terrans' precision, their discipline, and their advanced technology. He also thought about his people, their skill, their creativity, and their willingness to risk everything for their home. "We are not powerless," he whispered to himself. "We can survive this. We will learn. We will fight smart. We will protect Xylar." The villagers slept uneasily, but hope had returned. The first skirmish had shown that even a small, peaceful civilization could resist an overwhelmingly strong enemy. Nero and his team knew they had to prepare for what would come next, a larger attack, a true battle that could decide the fate of their planet. The Terrans had tested them, but the Zari had responded. The first skirmish was not a victory in the larger sense, but it was a beginning. From this moment, the Zari understood the power of strategy, courage, and unity. The warships in the sky were a threat, but they were also a teacher, revealing the way the Zari could rise to meet it. The Zari had survived their first encounter with the Terran warships, but Nero knew that survival alone was not enough. The Terrans were intelligent and precise, and if the Zari wanted to protect their planet, they had to learn quickly. In the council hall, Nero spread out holographic maps of the surrounding forests, mountains, and rivers. He showed the paths of the Terran drones and the locations of their scans. "They have patterns," he explained. "Every movement they make is deliberate. They rely on communication between their ships. If we can interrupt that, we can gain an advantage." The elders listened carefully. Elder Vero spoke slowly, "We have never fought a real enemy before. But if we act wisely, we can use what we know about our land. The forests, the rivers, and the mountains are ours. We can make them allies." The Zari began their preparations. Scouts traveled the forests, studying every tree, cave, and cliff. Nero helped them design new devices, small energy nets, portable shields, and noisemakers to confuse the Terran sensors. They modified their gliders for speed and agility, allowing teams to move quickly and strike where the Terrans would not expect. Nero also trained a small group of volunteers in observation techniques. "Watch their drones carefully," he said. "Notice the patterns, the timing, and the routes. Every detail is important. Every piece of information is a tool." As days passed, the Zari gained confidence. Minor skirmishes with the Terran drones became opportunities to test new strategies. A scout team placed energy nets in a narrow canyon, causing several drones to become entangled and crash. Another group created false signals that misled the drones, sending them in the wrong direction. These small victories taught the Zari an important lesson. The Terrans were powerful, but they were not unbeatable. Intelligence, creativity, and knowledge of the land could balance the scales. Nero shared these lessons with the council. "We are learning faster than they expect. Every encounter gives us an advantage. We must continue to adapt." The people of Xylar also learned quickly. Villagers worked together to hide important resources, create safe shelters, and prepare evacuation routes. Children were taught to recognize danger and to move quietly through the forests. Every citizen became part of the defense, understanding that survival required unity and courage. One morning, a team of scouts reported a significant discovery. They had observed the Terran warships communicating with each other in pulses of light. Nero analyzed the signals carefully. "This is important," he said. They depend on these signals for coordination. If we disrupt them, even for a short time, we can create opportunities for attack or escape. The Council agreed to focus on this weakness. Nero and the engineers worked day and night, creating devices that could interfere with the Terrans' communications. They tested them in small areas, gradually improving their range and effectiveness. The process was slow, but every success built confidence. Meanwhile, the Terran warships remained in orbit, watching and waiting. They launched occasional drones to probe the forests, testing the Zari defenses. Each time, the Zari applied their new strategies. The drones were slowed, disrupted, or forced to retreat. Every encounter was a lesson, and the Zari learned faster than the Terrans expected. By the end of the week, Nero stood on a cliff overlooking the valley. He watched the Terran warships, massive and silent against the sky. "They are powerful," he said quietly, "but we are not weak. We have knowledge, strategy, and courage. If we continue to learn, we can survive what is coming." The people of Xylar felt a new sense of hope. They had seen that cleverness could counter strength, and that even a peaceful civilization could prepare to defend itself. The Zari were no longer just survivors, they were becoming a people capable of resistance. That night, Nero worked in his workshop, reviewing every piece of information collected from the Terrans. He marked patterns, recorded movements, and designed new devices. Every calculation, every observation, brought the Zari closer to understanding their enemy. The Terran ships glowed faintly in the sky, unmoving yet always present. Nero knew that they were aware of the Zari's progress. But he also knew that the Zari were learning faster than the Terrans might expect. Every small victory, every disrupted signal, every clever ambush was proof that the Zari could adapt and endure. The first skirmish had shown what the Terrans could do. Now, the Zari were preparing for what they could do in return. Knowledge, courage, and unity would be their weapons. Nero looked at the stars and whispered, "We will learn. We will fight smart. Xylar will not fall easily." The lesson was clear: the Terrans were powerful, but intelligence and determination could level the battlefield. The Zari had survived their first encounters, and now they were ready to become more than survivors. They were becoming strategists, fighters, and guardians of their world. The morning sky over Xylar was heavy with tension. The Terran warships had moved closer to the planet's surface, their massive shadows stretching across forests, mountains, and villages. Nero stood on a ridge overlooking the valley below, his eyes scanning the horizon. Today was the day the Zari had feared and prepared for the first full-scale attack. The Council had given clear orders. Every village was to follow the defense plan, evacuation routes were ready, and scouts were positioned to monitor Terran movements. Nero's team had modified gliders and defensive devices for quick strikes, and the energy nets and shields were distributed throughout the forests. Every Zari citizen knew their role. The Terrans descended slowly, their warships casting long shadows over the land. Energy pulses lit up the sky, testing the defenses and warning the Zari of their power. Villagers hid behind trees, cliffs, and specially built shelters. Despite the fear, there was a quiet determination in their eyes. They had learned from previous encounters. They were ready to fight for their home. Nero signaled his team. "Remember your training. Watch the signals, follow the patterns, and stay together. Use the terrain. Do not underestimate them, but do not be afraid." The first wave of Terran drones struck a village near the river. They moved with precision, scanning for hidden defenses. But the Zari had anticipated this. Energy nets rose from the forests, entangling drones and confusing sensors. Nero's team used portable shields to protect key areas, and small blasts from modified devices forced the drones to retreat. The villagers watched in awe as their people fought with skill and courage. The Terrans responded with stronger attacks. Energy beams cut through trees and rocks, forcing the Zari to adapt quickly. Nero led a small strike team to the edge of the main battlefield. Their mission was to disrupt the Terran drones and slow the attack. They moved swiftly, hiding in shadows and using the terrain to their advantage. Every strike was precise, every movement calculated. The battle spread across the valley. The forests echoed with energy blasts and the hum of Zari devices. Despite the Terran's superior technology, the Zari used intelligence and creativity to defend their homes. Gliders swooped from the trees, carrying defensive nets and causing chaos among the drones. Small teams created false signals, leading some drones into traps. Nero watched the Terran warships carefully. He noticed that their movements, while powerful, followed patterns. They are strong, but predictable, he thought. We can use this. He signaled other teams to coordinate strikes, disrupting drone formations and creating openings for defense. The people of Xylar showed courage beyond measure. Villagers who were not trained fighters helped by moving supplies, guiding children to safety, and reinforcing defenses. Every citizen contributed, understanding that survival depended on unity and cooperation. The Zari were no longer passive observers of the attack, they were active defenders of their world. As the battle continued, Nero led a daring maneuver. He and his team launched a surprise attack on a cluster of drones near the cliffs. Using energy nets and portable shields, they disabled several drones and forced the Terrans to adjust their strategy. This small victory boosted the morale of the Zari forces. Despite the courage and skill of the Zari, the Terrans were relentless. Energy beams carved paths through the forests, and some villages were damaged. Nero realized that the fight was not just about defending territory, it was about proving that the Zari could resist, adapt, and survive. Every moment of delay, every clever maneuver, gave villagers time to escape and regroup. By evening, the first wave of attacks slowed. The Terrans had tested the Zari defenses and found resistance stronger than expected. Nero and his team regrouped, checking on villages and ensuring that everyone was safe. The Zari had survived the first major attack, but they knew it was only the beginning. That night, as the twin suns set and stars appeared in the sky, Nero walked through the village. The air was filled with smoke and the faint hum of damaged devices. Yet the people were alive, and their courage had shown that even against a powerful enemy, intelligence and bravery could hold the line. Elder Vero approached Nero and said, "Today we saw what we can do together. The Terrans are strong, but we are stronger in spirit. This battle is only the start, but it proves that Xylar will not fall easily." Nero nodded. He knew the next attacks would be more dangerous, but he also knew that the Zari had learned valuable lessons. Strategy, courage, and unity had turned fear into action. The first full-scale battle had tested every skill and every heart, and the Zari had endured. The Terran warships hovered silently above the forests, their lights flickering against the darkening sky. Nero looked up at them and thought, they came to show power, but we have shown them something more. We are not easy to break. We are the Zari, and we will protect our world. The last stand of the day had ended, but the war was far from over. Xylar was alive with courage, and its people were learning that even in the face of overwhelming force, determination and cleverness could turn the tide. Nero knew that the coming days would test them further, but the Zari were ready to meet the challenge. The air over Xylar was tense and electric. The Terran warships had returned, larger and more organized than before. Nero knew that the coming battle would test every skill the Zari had learned. The scouts reported increased drone activity, and energy beams lit the forests as the Terrans probed defenses. This time, there would be no simple skirmishes. The council had planned carefully. Nero and a small team were given a dangerous mission, to disable the main Terran warship's weapons system. If they succeeded, it would give the Zari forces a crucial advantage. The task was nearly impossible, but courage and strategy were their only hope. Nero gathered his team. "We must be precise," he said. "Every move counts. This is not just about survival, it is about protecting our people. We cannot fail." The team nodded, understanding the risk. Each member had trained for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare them for what lay ahead. They moved through the forests, keeping low and using every shadow for cover. The gliders carried them silently toward the enemy vessel, which hovered above a rocky valley. The Terrans had increased their patrols, and drones scanned the area constantly. Nero's heart pounded, but he focused on the plan. When they reached the edge of the valley, the team deployed energy nets and camouflage devices to confuse the drones. A few small pulses from their devices caused minor disruptions, but the Terrans quickly adjusted. Nero realized they would have only one chance to strike. "Now," he whispered, and the team launched forward. They moved with speed and precision, dodging energy pulses and leaping over debris. The main ship was enormous, its hull bristling with weapons and strange sensors. Nero studied its structure, remembering every diagram and calculation he had made. The team needed to reach the control area and plant the devices that would disable the ship's weapons. The first obstacle was a series of defensive drones surrounding the vessel. Nero and his team used clever tactics to mislead them, sending some drones into traps and distracting others. The energy nets entangled several, and the team moved quickly through the chaos. Each step was dangerous, and a single mistake could be fatal. When they reached the main ship, they encountered the toughest challenge yet: automated defense systems that scanned constantly for movement. Nero signaled his team to split and work on different access points. They carefully bypassed the sensors, using their knowledge of the ship's patterns to avoid detection. Inside the ship, the corridors were vast and metallic. The team moved silently, placing devices at the key weapon control stations. Every second counted. The Terrans were powerful, but the Zari had intelligence and determination on their side. Nero thought of the people of Xylar, their families, and the villages that depended on them. This gave him strength. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. A Terran drone had detected part of the team. Energy pulses shot through the corridors, and a member of the team was injured. Nero pushed forward, protecting the device they were installing. "Go," he shouted. "We cannot stop now." The device activated with a low hum, sending pulses through the ship's weapon systems. Lights flickered across the control panels as the main guns powered down temporarily. It was a small victory, but it gave the Zari forces outside a chance to regroup and strengthen defenses. As the team retreated, the injured member was carried carefully. Each step back was a struggle, with the Terrans searching for them relentlessly. Yet the courage and coordination of the team allowed them to escape the valley safely. Nero looked back at the Terran warship, now partially disabled, and felt a surge of pride. The Zari outside the ship noticed the difference immediately. The energy beams that had threatened villages now faltered. The battle shifted slightly in favor of the defenders. Every clever maneuver, every act of bravery, and every sacrifice had made a difference. The Terrans realized that the Zari were not an easy target. By the end of the day, the Zari had held their ground. Villages were still standing, and the people had survived another wave of attacks. Nero and his team returned to the council hall, exhausted but triumphant. Elder Vero looked at them and said, "Today, you showed what courage and intelligence can do. You risked everything for your people, and you have inspired us all." Nero understood the weight of the moment. Many had sacrificed, but their bravery had changed the course of the battle. The Terrans had underestimated a small civilization that was willing to fight smart, learn quickly, and protect its home at any cost. As night fell over Xylar, the warships hovered silently above the mountains. The Zari had won a temporary reprieve, but they knew the struggle was far from over. Still, hope filled the hearts of the people. The courage displayed by Nero and his team had proven that even a seemingly weaker civilization could challenge a far stronger enemy. The legacy of bravery and sacrifice would live on. Every story of heroism, every clever strike, and every selfless act would inspire generations to defend Xylar. Nero looked at the stars and whispered, We have shown them that we will not be broken. We will continue to fight, learn, and protect our home. The Zari had faced the might of the Terran warships and had survived. They had learned that courage, intelligence, and unity were the most powerful weapons of all. Xylar would continue to thrive because its people were willing to stand together, fight smart, and never give up. The battle had ended, but the sky still held the faint glow of the Terran warships as they hovered above the mountains. Smoke rose from the forests and villages, and the ground was scarred from energy blasts. The Zari had survived the first full-scale attack, and the lessons they had learned were clear. Courage, intelligence, and unity had allowed them to face a powerful enemy. Nero walked through the village, helping villagers repair damaged homes and distribute supplies. He noticed how quickly the Zari had adapted. Children carried small tools, assisting with repairs, while adults reinforced energy shields around key areas. Every person contributed, understanding that their world depended on collective effort. Elder Vero joined Nero, observing the resilient people. They will remember this day, he said. They will know that even when the odds are against them, they can stand and fight. That is the legacy of our people. Nero nodded, thinking of the scouts and volunteers who had risked everything during the battle. Many had been injured, but none had faltered in spirit. The bravery shown in those moments had inspired everyone. The Terrans came expecting fear, he said. Instead, they saw determination. They saw a civilization that refuses to be broken. The Zari engineers and scientists worked day and night to improve their technology. They analyzed the Terran ships, recording every signal and movement. Small victories, like disrupting drone communications and learning patterns, became the foundation for better defenses. Nero supervised the development of new devices, energy traps, and stealth tools. Each innovation was designed to protect Xylar while minimizing risk to its people. As the days passed, the Terran warships remained nearby, studying the Zari from orbit. They did not attack immediately, perhaps surprised by the resistance they had encountered. The Zari used this time to strengthen their defenses and train additional teams. They were ready for any future confrontation, knowing that the next challenge would be even greater. In the evenings, Nero gathered young scouts to share lessons from the battle. Observe carefully, he told them. Learn patterns, understand weaknesses, and work together. Courage alone is not enough. Knowledge is just as important as bravery. The scouts listened intently, inspired by the stories of daring strikes, clever traps, and teamwork that had turned the tide during the Terran attack. Villagers told stories of the battle, passing down memories of courage, ingenuity, and unity. The tales spoke of gliders soaring through forests, energy nets disabling drones, and small teams risking everything to protect the people. These stories became part of the Zari culture, a living memory of the first encounter with an advanced civilization. Nero also reflected on the personal sacrifices made. Many Zari had given everything to defend their world. Their bravery was not forgotten. Statues and memorials were placed near the battle sites to honor their courage. Future generations would look upon these symbols and remember the strength of their ancestors. The Terran warships eventually began to retreat, rising slowly into orbit and disappearing beyond the horizon. Though the battle was not entirely over, the withdrawal was a clear sign that the Zari had proven themselves. Their defense, intelligence, and courage had earned respect from a civilization far stronger and more advanced. Nero stood on a hill, looking at the forests and rivers that stretched across the planet. He thought about the journey from fear to confidence, from uncertainty to resilience. Xylar had been threatened, but its people had shown that even a small civilization could survive and adapt in the face of overwhelming odds. This is only the beginning, he whispered. The Terrans will return, but we will be ready. Our people are strong. Our minds are clever. Our hearts are brave. Xylar will never fall easily. The people of Xylar began rebuilding with renewed purpose. Villages were repaired, defenses improved, and training continued for future scouts and engineers. The lessons learned from the Terran encounter shaped every decision, every plan, and every innovation. The Zari were no longer simply peaceful inhabitants, they were guardians of their world. In the years that followed, stories of the first encounter spread across the galaxy. Other civilizations learned of the Zari's courage and ingenuity. The Terran warships had come to intimidate, but they had left with a new understanding: strength alone does not define a civilization. Intelligence, unity, and determination can make even the smallest world formidable. Nero looked at the sky one last time that evening, the stars reflecting in his eyes. He thought of every person who had fought, worked, and persevered. Xylar had survived the first encounter with the Terrans, and its people had grown stronger. Their legacy was clear: even in the face of overwhelming power, courage and cleverness could protect a world and inspire generations to come. The Zari had faced the greatest challenge of their history. They had adapted, learned, and defended their home. The first sighting of the Terran warships had become a story of resilience. The last stand had become a lesson for the future. Xylar would continue to thrive, and its people would always remember that strength is measured not only by power, but by heart, intelligence, and unity.